Hi and welcome to the Active Code podcast, brought to you by Aspire Active Partnerships. I'm Paul Griffiths, and joining me each week on the pod is Luke Johnson.
Aspire Active Partnerships is a community of like-minded business leaders who all believe that collaboration in the sports coaching and children's activity sector is essential for success. We've proven that working in collaboration does benefit business growth and essentially helps more children be more active more often.
To combat physical inactivity, we need organisations that are performing at their very best. Organisations will only operate to high standards if they are led well. So, if we can focus on developing high quality leaders throughout an organisation, not just at the top, customers will experience higher quality services, which means heightened enjoyment levels and increased levels of physical activity. And if we do this at an early age, we know that we can build the foundations for a more active, happier and healthier life. The Active Code investigates what it really takes to be a successful leader and how organisations can combat physical inactivity.
We won't be alone through this journey. We are joined by business owners and experts from our sector, as well as inspirational people from outside our industry. We'll understand the importance of physical activity to our guests, reflect on leadership experiences, and gain thought-provoking insights on how we can crack the Active Code and get more children more active more often. If you like what you hear, please leave us a rating and subscribe. Suzy, welcome to the Active Code. It's great to have you with us.
Great. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be with you today.
Could you start by giving the listeners a bit of an insight into your story so far?
Yeah, of course. So, hello, firstly, to your listeners. I'm Suzy Hunt. So, my story so far, wow, what a question to open with. So I always say my story kind of began back in 2017, actually. So about 7 years ago. And that's really random because obviously I've been on this earth a little bit longer than that. But the reason why I say that is because I was on a training course one day. So I was on a leadership training course in my corporate career. So I was head of field sales for the out-of-home function for Lucozade and Ribena in the UK. And I loved that job. It was such a cool job. It was brilliant. I got to really kind of focus in on sales performance and sales delivery through people. And I had a team around me who were exceptional at what they did and brilliant. And yeah, that's kind of the main reason why I loved that job, really. But anyway, I was on a training course and I was in the break. So we were having a coffee break and the facilitator of that session came over to me in the coffee break and said, Suzy, I've just met you. This is really random, but I think you would make a great coach. And I was like, okay, hi, thanks very much. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I generally thought they were talking about the next kind of Gareth Southgate of football. I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. What's a coach? And they said, look, there's just something about you, the energy, the vibe. Look, I think it's something you should really think about because I just think you'd be really good at it. And I was like, okay, great, thank you. And at that time, I was also eating a malted milk biscuit randomly. And so I kind of call that now like my malted milk moment where something went off in my mind for me around a bit of a light bulb where I was like, oh, this sounds interesting because as I said a moment ago, I loved that job that I was in, but I had started to reach a bit of a plateau in terms of where was I going next in my career. And also I think knowing what energized me and developing people, that side of my role at the time, I found incredibly energizing. I'll be honest, I was also pretty good at it. So I think one of my superpowers, I didn't know it at the time, but one of my superpowers was delivering performance through people. And I loved that side of kind of the role as well. And so, I was curious by this comment, by this observation. I'd met this person for a couple of hours and, they were kind of giving me some quite, in a way, kind of career defining advice. So I went and got myself a coach. So I went and got myself a career coach because I was at that point where I was in a bit of a crossover. And that subsequently led to some next steps, which was at 32, I went back to university. So I went to the University of Salford and decided to get a qualification in coaching and mentoring. So I was working still full time at Lucozade in, a pretty big role, sales leadership role. I'd gone back to university. I was doing a lot of traveling in my role. And then I found out I was pregnant with my first and only child, Arthur. So I was like, what is this? I've taken on so much here. This is a bit crazy. But actually, I subsequently went on to qualify as a coach. I got my qualification. And in 2020, I pivoted my career. So I ended up leaving my corporate role and setting up my own business. It kind of been in the making, those steps that I'd been working on with my coach and my qualification. It'd all been kind of in the background leading to this point. And I pivoted my career and the rest is history. So I'm now an exec coach. So I work with a number of C-suite leaders in organizations. So I do mainly exec coaching, leadership coaching, and a lot on confidence. So personal confidence, a lot with teams. So team development work. So getting teams to work better together. And also, and finally, the third area that I kind of work on is sales. So bringing in my sales skills and expertise and offering sales training and coaching. So yeah, that's a long answer to your question, but actually is a really important kind of story and reason as to why I'm here talking to you today, actually.
It sounds like you should also be a coach of some description, Susie, and how to manage so many things all at once. The full-time role,
Yeah.
university course,
Yeah.
and then pregnant with your first child.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you took it all in your stride, and now you
Well,
are where you are.
I had my moment, I'll be honest. I'm also type 1 diabetic as well. So just to throw that into the mix. So, my pregnancy wasn't as straightforward maybe as others. But that being said, I think the work I'd done with my coach had lit a fire in me that I loved my experience with my coach. It was so many light bulbs went off for me. I know that sounds so cliche and it's true. Once you've experienced coaching, you get it. It's really hard to sell. That's the biggest thing that I sometimes find is, articulating to people the value and the benefit they're going to get out of this experience with me. But yeah, I was ready. There was a fire lit for sure.
Cool. I think on this episode, it'd ideally focus around the sales side of things, but if we will no doubt kind of go down different paths and maybe go into like leadership and management as well. But from we've had several guests on the podcast who, when we talk about sales, we talk about sales as being a bit of a dirty word, and it's quite often overlooked. And I think from my perspective, and I'm probably talking on behalf of Luke here, is that a lot of people in our sector struggle with sales and have lack of confidence in sales because they don't really value it as an important skill set and the knowledge and experience that naturally comes as a business owner, someone that works in a leadership team. You've got to sell. You're kind of always selling. I know it's a bit of a cliche word, but you are always selling, whether that's to people that are joining your team or actually getting work into the business. But it's something that not enough people actually focus on and try to improve and be better at. So we know that if we engage more schools in our businesses, naturally we start to engage more children in activity, which if they're experiencing positive activity experiences, then they're more likely to be active for life. So for us, it's a big thing to focus on, and for some people, they may feel uncomfortable with it. But when it comes to sales, is that a common theme across all sectors, or are we kind of like alienated a little bit here as an activity sector?
No, I think to reassure you, it's something that I see quite a lot, quite frequently with those that I work with at an individual level and also at a group level as well, sometimes with sales teams. I think, there is a myth often associated with sales that you've got to be quite aggressive, got to be quite dominant. I don't think programs like The Apprentice help sometimes with that persona and that kind of, story around sales. I think as well, for a lot of people, they build it into something that they can make them feel uncomfortable, give them the ick a little bit, like I've got to be something I'm not. And I think when I first started out in my sales career, I was the same. But actually, I think what I've realized over time is that people buy people, and there is strength in being yourself and bringing your own take and personality into that sales conversation, and conversation being really critical part of sales. Because actually, a lot of the time with the sales process or the sales steps that you might be following as part of your organization, you can still bring you into it because, like I've said, people buy people. But also, I think it's really, really important that we don't forget it is about the customer. So, it's about them at the end of the day. And actually, if you give them the experience and the space to be really clear around what they need, and you listen to that, you acknowledge that, you really build a proposal that links back to their needs and what they're looking for, then the rest of it kind of follows. And so that kind of perception that it's a bit aggressive and you've got to be really overt and extroverted and it might make me feel a bit icky actually never comes to realization if you do the front bit really well, which is about them as the customer. So yeah, that's kind of been my experience.
Is that something that you learnt on the job as such, going back to your time in that corporate world? Was that ever, did you go through training yourself, or was it literally like, right, Susie, this is your job role, this is what we want you to do, off you go, good luck?
Yeah, a bit of both, if I'm honest. I think I went on some amazing training courses. I was very privileged to work in fast-moving consumer goods sector, which, household drinks like Lucozade and Ribena are a part of. The training we got was amazing, and set me some great disciplines and foundations to work from in my role. I was a national account manager for a period of time, a role that probably taught me the most about kind of cutting my teeth in the world of sales, what worked, what didn't. And I think probably realistically looking at that role, I was following those steps, that process that I'd been taught in training. And I think maybe I didn't quite step into that space of also allowing my personality to the show at the same time, and kind of both having an equal footing in the way that I was building that relationship with that particular customer. Whereas now I've got my own business, that is not the case at all. I would probably say that my personality and me just being me is what I tend to lead with the most. And then I bring in some of those disciplines and those steps that I've learned around what a great sales approach looks like. But, I think it comes into just being really clear and comfortable with offering a bit of value of who you are, because at the end of the day, people buy from people.
Yeah. And is there any, if you kind of look to now and the organisations that you support and the people that you work with, are there any trends with regards to where people need more support and more help
Yeah,
with regards to sales?
absolutely. So I'd say the front end of a sales process, which is around listening, listening like completely to the end of a conversation, summarizing what you've heard to make sure that you've captured that correctly, because we all have our own lens that we put on things. And also, I think asking good, open questions. I can sometimes, find that because I love questions, that asking questions is pretty much my job. So sometimes I can, there's a time where I have to kind of balance that with not making this person feel like they're being interviewed. Of course, you need to, read the room and be pragmatic. But I think when you're first meeting somebody and establishing what they're looking for, what their pinch points are, what their challenges are, where they're struggling, questions are your friend, because you need that clarity in order to help you move forward. And I think certainly in my work, I've seen that often those two steps of asking great questions and listening fully to the answers that you are given and summarizing back what you've heard can be glossed over, or that you can move through those 2 stages quite quickly because you want to get to proposal or solution mode. Because we all want solutions, don't we? Like quick fixes and hacks and top tips. We love it. Yeah, as people. But actually we rush that bit too quickly. When we get to that point of offering a solution, we're not offering the right solution because we've not listened properly to what they need.
I think so. Anderson, a person that we all know, he references listening to the last drop. And I think
Yes.
that's very much what you're talking about there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I echo that as a sentiment completely. And I think it's really, really important. And I think, in any context, actually, whether you're in sales or you're just influencing, we all have to influence day to day in our personal lives. For example, I've got a 5-year-old getting them to put their shoes on to leave the house in the morning, on time and quick enough. I have to influence him to get going and get those shoes on and go. And, I think sometimes, I'm like, can we just crack on and go? And probably my listening skills get not activated to the level they should be. But actually, it's a really critical skill that I think life's busy, isn't it? We've got busy jobs, busy lives. It's quick. It's off. It's understandable that we often make quick assumptions because we want to get to quick delivery, especially with economic conditions and stuff like that now. So I think, it's a skill which I feel has dropped off around its importance, but really needs to be back on the agenda.
And from the front end of those sales right the way through to signing, we've done a bit of research over the years, and I think we're currently at about 21 touch points it takes in our sector for us to go from inquiry through to a close or a sale. So it is very much an endurance sport in itself. Resilience, discipline, the mindset of that salesperson. In your experience, what can help salespeople maintain the energy? We've mentioned confidence already, but that kind of resilience to perform under that constant pressure of plugging away through all of those touch points. The phrase "what gets measured gets managed" was coined by the American management consultant Pete Drucker over 40 years ago. Although there have been some alternatives to this phrase, one that resonates with me is "what gets measured gets improved."
In recent years, this alternative phrase has gained popularity, emphasising the idea that measuring progress is crucial to achieving improvement.
Scorecards are a great way to highlight your strengths and identify blind spots in your organisation while providing instant, actionable steps on how you can improve that needs improving.
So, how does your organisation measure up?
Head to capscorecard.scoreapp.com and take approximately 5 minutes to answer some yes/no questions. Once you've done that, you will get an instant personalised report tailored to your organisation with clear, actionable steps. And it's totally free.
That's capscorecard.scoreapp.com, and the link will be in the show notes too.
Yeah. I think when you've got something in the pipeline that you're trying to bring to fruition, get over the line, that resilience, as you said, is really critical. I think the number one way you can continue to work on that for yourself is through your self-talk. How you talk to yourself is the biggest way to maintain your performance and to elevate it. I can talk from personal experience. I've done a lot of work on my own personal confidence and self-talk, but also that with people that I work with in teams. And actually, if you tell yourself that this isn't going to happen, or this is rubbish, or this customer is going to be challenging, then it will be 100%. Because you've created that reality there for yourself, and that's what you're expecting. Okay, so that's what you'll see, and that will be what you'll experience. But if you tell yourself that, this is going to be great, I'm going to get to learn some new skills here, I'm going to get to build a relationship with somebody that I haven't, built a relationship with before. I'm going to get to offer some services to some schools that is going to really help and benefit their pupils. Then you will reframe that for yourself, and you'll go into that experience feeling a lot more positive about it. And I think the bit that often people forget is doing that on a daily basis. So that is the discipline that will build your resilience and get you through what can be off sometimes a bit of a tricky, place from A to B and getting that sale over the line. But that discipline day to day, absolutely, in my experience, is what gets you through.
Susie, would you be able to, let's say if there's a business owner listening or someone involved in sales in their organisation, in our sector. I'm a big believer as well in this. So my background was in many years ago now in sports psychology. So I think elements of that
Yeah.
really, unbeknown to me at times, I still use it. I think it's really powerful. Could you, let's say that those individuals want some support and think self-talk. What on earth is self-talk? How do I apply that before I go to the meeting tomorrow or after the meeting I go to tomorrow? How can I embed that? So could you just give us some just a quick overview of what does that look like? How can someone implement it within their daily habits, I guess?
Yeah. So I think it's about getting yourself in the best possible shape before you go into that meeting or that interaction that you're going to approach. I think this is quite personal for people, but to give some kind of tips or some kind of food for thought, for me, it's about how I talk to myself in the morning. So I am very, very keen on positive statements for me. So that might be I am enough, for example, or I've got this, something quite simple like that. And I say those out loud and I say them a couple of times. That for me is powerful enough to reframe my mindset in that moment. So that was a tip that works for me. You might be listening to this now and think that absolutely does not work for me. That's cool. Other people, for example, they listen to like their favorite music, their favorite song or artist, whatever it might be, but just gets them in that position where they are feeling good, kind of physically, emotionally, mentally, to go forward then into whatever it is that they are facing for that day. I think the other thing in terms of self-talk is we all have a little voice in our head that often, talks to us about, well, you should have done that better. Or I thought you were going to get found out on that. And that's because you're not good enough to do that. I've got one. Yeah. And I've actually made mine a character. Okay. So I visualize mine. Mine's called my uninvited guest. But that takes it away from it being me. And that in a way makes it something and someone that isn't part of me. And so doesn't have the power to influence my mind and my thoughts in that way. So maybe thinking about actually acknowledging what that inner voice sounds like, looks like, feels like for you, and thinking about how you might want to change what it's saying. So that's another way of looking at it as well in terms of self-talk.
Something similar that I use, which I guess comes in that category, is the power pose stuff.
Yes.
That
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stuff. So before,
You should have seen him on the table. before.
so the Superman pose. Before delivering a workshop or something at a conference is just find an area on your own, even in the elevator or wherever you are, and do that for a couple of minutes. That kind of because it is quite physical as well. You can kind of feel the physical lift of like the weight off your shoulders a little bit with that stuff.
Absolutely. And also visualization, is really, really critical. I had a workshop last week, which, stretched me probably a little bit out of my comfort zone. And the day before, I just took 5 minutes to visualize what it would feel like finishing that and having done an amazing job. And what would the room look like? What would people be saying? How would I feel? And that's really, really, really powerful way of also kind of working on your self-talk and your self kind of awareness in a slightly different way.
An area of a kind of sales role is relationship building. We've always
Yeah.
talked about kind of being yourself and things like that, and it's pretty critical. Is that a common kind of skill gap you see when you are working with sales leaders and organizations and sales teams?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned this because I definitely have seen this probably come up more in the last 12, 18 months than I have done historically. And I think that is because we've maybe slightly moved away from those kind of interpersonal skills and the importance of those in building relationships. You know, a lot of our world is online now, which I absolutely advocate. I'm a big believer in technology and I utilize it a lot myself. But also it's about, I think, the blend of bringing in that personal element, as I've mentioned before. So yeah, I think it's something where people have maybe sometimes, with the pandemic context as well, we spent a lot of time on our own, that interaction piece and how you build relationships with people. If you're not as naturally maybe avert in knowing how to do that or had experience in doing it, suddenly finding yourself in a place where you've got to build a relationship with a key decision maker, can potentially feel quite overwhelming. And I think if that's the spot you're in, is go back to basics and actually just spend some time with that person, ask them some questions, like I've said, listen to them, summarize back what you've heard. They're the best ways of building relationships.
Suzy, you mentioned technology there. Can we talk about AI? And
Yeah.
what's your experience of using AI in a sales environment in the last, say, 6 months? And how is that facilitating sales roles?
Yeah, great question. I think it's still evolving because I don't think we're fully, done in terms of what that landscape looks like yet. I think for me, certainly, I'm still in test and learn mode with trying some tools out and seeing where that goes. I think that's probably been more in terms of automation, CRM, management, and also in terms of building proposals. So automating, using tools and AI to really capture what that customer or that potential client said they were looking for, and then building that into a proposal that's quite efficient to pull together. So that kind of the way that I've experienced it, certainly in the last kind of 6 months or so. I don't think we're fully there. We're fully done in terms of the impact it's going to have on sales experience and the way and art of selling. I hope that there will always be a need for people in that process to an extent. I think especially for business to business, especially for high value, sales conversations and proposals, people, again, buying into people and believing it in people. But I think that tech and AI has a role in helping and assisting that progress and that movement. Yeah, I do. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you on this one. I think it's at the moment, I think it's getting better, but I think you see a lot of people that are either with it or completely against it. And I think those people tend to be those that are concerned about their roles, probably concerned that their business will disappear if we use it. But actually, people need to be utilizing it in some way, shape, or form. And I think you've hit the nail on the head on some of the things you've mentioned there, and the use of AI to enhance a system, a process, to be more productive. And I think if we all look at AI being in place to help us be more productive, all of a sudden we can start to open our eyes a little bit more and not be so scared with it. But yeah, it's certainly a fast paced environment. I heard someone talk about AI being I said, "Do you say your lad's 5 at the moment?"
Yeah.
Yeah, so almost like a toddler, trying to engage with a toddler and yeah, you approach it that way at the moment because there's a long way to go.
Yeah. I love that.
Like with toddlers, it's we've all been there. It can be quite harrowing, can't it, at times? Um, don't look at AI like that. So it does get better. It does get better. It gets easier. Sometimes you'll in a couple of weeks or maybe a year you won't be having to ask to get their shoes on. They'll be doing it before you know it.
It's hoping.
Suzy, at a recent conference, you introduced Lego Serious Play to our network, which was amazing, and people are very, very excited when they talk about it. Why does this concept work so well in a team training environment?
Yes. Lego Serious Play is my new favorite tool in my trainer's toolkit. It has been around since the 1990s. It's developed with Lego and a learning professor. And it's basically a learning methodology that's super interactive, super playful, and brings Lego into the the kind of workshop. So the way it works is that you use Lego as metaphors, and you use it as a tool to help you create or solve a problem. So the way it's structured is that you can use it for ideation, you use it for problem solving, and also as part of that kind of process where people are, building Lego together, they're looking for certain bricks, they're having conversations, they're sharing the models that they've created. And part of the richness of that is that teams start working really, really well together. It changes the context of things, but in a really kind of, playful, engaging way that takes us sometimes back to our own childhoods of potentially playing with Lego and building models. And it's so visual. So the recall from a Lego Serious Play workshop is substantially higher than maybe a more traditional format in terms of workshopping, where I'm writing something up on a flip chart or I'm verbalizing my ideas and my thoughts. I'm going to get you to, create those ideas and thoughts that you've got in Lego. You'll remember what those thoughts and ideas were far more after the workshop when you've gone back to your day-to-day job than you will if I'd asked you to verbalize them and write it on a flip chart. So it's brilliant. It's growing in popularity as a tool, and it's super inclusive. And I think that's the key thing, because I've been in many workshops, both as a delegate and as a facilitator, where, you might suddenly have a particularly kind of dominant voice in the room. And so you don't get a chance to offer your, opinions or thoughts or ideas, or actually you don't want to because you're worried about the seniority in that room and you think, oh, it's a silly idea or what have you. But the way the Lego Serious Play workshops are developed and created is that every single person has the opportunity to build and share, regardless of seniority. And so it takes away that as a limitation. And that's also why it's so brilliant.
What I love about it is it's going against what we just spoke about with AI, and you don't need tech. There's not many things now. They're just like a techless. And the fact is, like, it's Lego. It's great. Most people love Lego, but to see a room of about 20 people in that room just fully engaged and building and being creative, and that's what I thought was great about that. The kind of the boost of creativity that just got people away from their day-to-day headaches and away from tech. And actually, it was just them in their groups, liaising with you as a facilitator. I thought it was great. It was really, really good way of getting people engaged and thinking, like you say, getting those creative juices flowing and really thinking of about new ways of doing things. And I didn't even think about what you said there, Susie, with the inclusivity side of things as well. I mean, as soon as you said that, we've all been in a room where we don't want to speak because we feel like we might say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So no, it's great. Really, really good.
Around the kind of engagement of young people in physical activity, which many people listening will be doing themselves or as their organisation, the attracting and retaining of people is crucial, and it's often a struggle. So what would you say the key ingredients are to a truly people-first culture? And where do leaders often get that wrong?
Yeah, great question. I see this a lot in my work, and also in my experience, I've got it wrong previously as well as a sales leader. I think the key thing is around not assuming you know people from the off. Okay, so I think often we we get a new person in our team, for example, we inherit a team, whatever context it might be, we can quite easily focus on the delivery of what we need to do in that role and through that team. And we get into the operational stuff, the technical stuff of selling and moving stuff forward, getting stuff done and delivering. And I've done that. Okay. So I can speak from experience. But actually, I think the key thing to kind of retaining talent and building a great and high performing sales team actually is the step before that, which is getting to know your people. And again, this goes back to what we were talking about before about asking great questions, listening, summarizing what you've heard. But as human beings, we all just want the opportunity to be heard. That gives us so much value. That makes us feel brilliant. It makes us feel valued. It's in that way quite simple. And I think spending time one-to-one with your team members, your people, on a regular basis, understanding what's going on for them right now. Where are they at? What are their challenges? What's energizing them? Where are they struggling? What's important to them outside of work? Because, our lives evolve. We're people at the end of the day. When we come to work, regardless of what anybody says, we're not robots yet. So actually, closing off completely what's going on outside of work is really difficult because we're humans. We bring our true selves to work a lot of the time. And so making sure that you actively invest in getting to know your people on a regular basis, and building, a team and a culture that puts them at the heart of what we need to do is the first step to making a people-centric culture, in my experience.
That's a really good point. So I was just thinking then when you're talking about that our sales team, say, or customer-facing team, will probably know more about their customers than they do their colleagues. If you asked them to write a page on this school that you work with, they could probably write a lot down because they've had those 21 touch points even before we start working with them. Then we're keeping in touch with the schools throughout the year. However, they probably can write a lot less about the colleagues they work with because organizations probably haven't put the time for that kind of collaboration. We have a couple of training weeks a year, maybe a couple of Zoom calls, but day to day, they're probably not engaging that much with their colleagues.
Yeah. And often, I see this come to fruition in conflict in teams. And it's not about like the thing they think they're in conflict about, whether that's about a process or somebody's, not done something, often actually it's that there's a lack of understanding around that other person or the dynamics that are in that group or that team. And that's what's creating the conflict, not actually the fact that somebody didn't email the customer back on time. It's not actually about that a lot of the time. And I think what you say there is it's really, really important is spending some time to also get to understand your peers and colleagues. Because, there's been instances, and I have this now and also in my corporate career, where I probably was stuck on something and I could have done with the help of a colleague. Had I had known that they were an expert in a particular area, then I would have absolutely tapped into that knowledge and expertise to help me and continue to help me grow and build my own skills as well. But we often just skip that bit because we think we know it. And we might, but it's always good to check in from time to time, I say.
Suzy, do you think it's potentially a confidence thing as well? Do people sometimes, maybe they have the knowledge and the skills to utilise, or they know of someone in their team that can support them, but sometimes they don't have that self-confidence to actually give it a go or go and talk to someone within their teams. So I think that there's a lot of me and my business partner were talking about this a few weeks ago, and how do you get? We know people are confident in certain situations, and we know that they have the ability to give things a go and just have a go. It kind of if you fail, if you get it wrong, don't worry about it. But I think sometimes some people they just lack that self-confidence. So how can they and how can leaders, managers help people overcome that?
I think this is where reframing is really important. What I mean by that is thinking about, what's the worst that's going to happen when me going over and asking this person to help me? Thinking, well, actually, the worst that's going to happen is, I don't know, they might not want to help me. Okay, am I cool with that? Yeah, I think so. I'm not going to lose my job or nothing really, really bad's going to happen. And I think that's where that reframing piece can be really critical. The other thing I would say is, thinking about it or coming at it from a place of understanding. So I've had this before where I'm like, can you just help me understand? And just by saying that word understanding, I don't think anyone's ever said no to me. Okay, because actually it's like, I just want to understand. I want to actually understand how you've done that, or what you've got there and your experience of this particular situation. That's a really nice way of reframing it and also approaching it in the moment as well. You don't have to be, if that doesn't feel right and authentic to you, straight over and be direct of saying, I want your help on X, Y, and Z. If you don't want to, you can, if that's cool and you feel authentic in doing that in your approach. But just saying, I'd love to understand more about this, or, I'm just trying to get better at this. Could you help me understand how you've done it? Yeah, it's a really, really nice way of kind of making a bit more of a middle ground.
And Suzy, you've got your own podcast, the Coaching Cast.
Okay.
How can that help leaders, businesses, individuals?
Yeah, so the Coaching Cast is a podcast that I co-host with, first and foremost, my friend, Lisa. So me and Lisa have been friends for nearly 10 years. Lisa's also a coach, and we work together at Lucozade. Our podcast is about you helping you manage the never-ending, evolving challenges of the workplace. And we cover lots of different topics, from self-confidence to leadership to health in business. We have guests on who come and talk to us. So we've had some pretty cool and epic guests come to talk to us about personal branding, menopause in business, some kind of finance guests, so managing your own kind of finances in business as well. So a broad range of topics. And also we have episodes where it's just Lisa and I talking about certain subjects as well. It's very lighthearted. It's very conversational. We have a feature at the end as well called Bingo, which is where we call out phrases which get commonly used in the workplace, which make us all cringe, whether we want to admit it or not. So that's always a highlight. So it's available wherever you get your podcast, and lots of different topics to tap into.
Could you give us an example of one of the things that come up in your bingo game?
There's bound to be a phrase that we've used as well.
Yeah,
we've said in the last
absolutely.
half an hour, 45 minutes.
Journey is always one that comes up a lot. We've been on a journey. That was a good one. We're recording tomorrow actually, and we've got let me find it. We've got a really good one for tomorrow, which one of our listeners emailed into us. And I have to say, I'd never heard this one before. So see if you had. So yeah, it's negative outperformance, which means underperformance. So finding a positive way to say you're not performing.
No, can't say that one's ever been used in the Sky office.
Capturing hearts and minds. That's another good one.
Yeah, heard of that one. Never used it. Thinking outside the box is one that always.
Yeah.
Must
Yeah.
be common. Right, thank you, Suzy. Well, me and Luke are going to go away now and come up with our own bingo.
Yeah,
I've
do
enjoyed
it.
it.
Let me know where you get to.
We'll get a buzzer in the office.
Yeah.
Buzz whenever you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. There's some brilliant insights there. 40 odd minutes of some really good insights and really helpful tips. And it's always good to kind of get some new ideas from people outside of our sector as well. We're big advocates of people in our sector looking further afield and getting some hints, tips, insights about how we can all improve as leaders and managers in our organisation. So really appreciate your time, and we'll tune into the coaching cast at some point.
Yeah, please do. No, thanks very much for having me. It's been great.
Thanks, Susan.
Search for the Active Code on your podcast app. Let's work together to get more people more active more often.